If recent superhero games have made you feel like they've been implementing unnecessarily convoluted RPG systems like crafting, modding, min-maxing your gear, and want something that harkens back to the simpler days of Marvel Ultimate Alliance and X-Men Legends, then Justice League Cosmic Chaos might just be the game to scratch that itch. Developed by PHL Collective, a small studio out of Philadelphia, and published by Outright Games out of London, you'd be forgiven for not being aware of this game's existence, for it didn't really have a big marketing push as your typical AAA comic book video game would have nowadays. I've had people tweet at me saying they had no idea a whole-ass Justice League game is on the PlayStation Store, which is disheartening to see because I feel like people aren't highlighting this game because of its more kiddie tone and art style. So I'm here to tell you why you shouldn't sleep on Justice League Cosmic Chaos. Cosmic Chaos is a top-down isometric action RPG like Diablo, Minecraft Dungeons, and Justice League Heroes. Actually, I'd say this game is a better version of Justice League Heroes. The perfect way to describe this game is baby's first dungeon crawler. It takes all the things you'd expect to see in the ARPG genre and puts it before a kid-friendly lens, making JLCC super accessible and fun for the whole family. The playable heroes are Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Combat is very simple. There's just one basic melee attack button. But hear me out. Despite this game not offering just one more melee attack button for heavier attacks or to do combos with, I got a lot of mileage out of this one melee attack button. Attacks felt punchy and their feedback was satisfying. The DC Trinity is fluidly animated, and the combat is just generally devoid of any clunkiness or awkwardness, which is something comic book games are always wary of, right? Melee combat can very easily feel stiff and not quite right. But I can confidently say that that's not the case here. Granted, it might be because developing combat mechanics for a top-down isometric beat-em-up is simpler than developing one for a fully 3D action game, but it shouldn't go without notice. Of course, each hero has special cooldown abilities that are unlocked as you level up. While there aren't that many to play around with, the ones offered here are very different from one another, and are a good representation of our hero's powers. Taking out a group of bad guys with one sweeping heat vision attack never gets old, nor does bouncing Wonder Woman's shield in a crowded corridor. Batman's specials kinda suck though, not gonna lie. The game incentivizes you to switch between the three heroes often by throwing in multiple enemies at once that have different weaknesses. Stuff like weakness to fire, ice, electricity, and more. So obviously Superman would be best equipped to handle enemies that are weak to fire due to his heat vision power. Batman's gadgets have cryogenic capabilities infused into them, and so on. Enemies are color-coded to let you know what element they are weak to, and switching between characters takes less than a second. So the pace of combat is at a constant 100 miles per hour. Again, it's baby's first dungeon crawler, so it's kinda cute just how obvious enemy weaknesses are made to the player. Just match the colors. For me it's gonna be interesting having played this game just a few months away from Diablo 4. Where I imagine systems are going to be deeper and offer more customization options. I've never really played a rich dungeon crawler as I imagine the Diablo games to be. The deepest ones I've played are probably Ultimate Alliance and X-Men Legends. Again, baby's first dungeon crawler. I'm the baby. Something that's been lacking in superhero games with RPG systems is meaningful loot that pulls recognizable costume pieces or gear that makes us go, oh wow, look, it's Leatherboy's ball gag. 30% plus damage to squirrel type enemies. Lately it's been generic materials represented by pictures you'd find in a science textbook. Even Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 went with the boring ISO 8 rocks, after having character-specific loot in the original game. Cosmic Chaos brings this back by having loot like Red Hood's helmet, Raven's cloak, Plastic Man's goggles. They each apply buffs to the character you choose to equip. So before, Superman was only effective against enemies who are weak to fire, but he becomes a man of many talents when you give him Ice's winter boots. Some of these have effects that are solely for shits and giggles, like the aforementioned Plastic Man goggles. They just give your steps a little squeak. Just a little squeak. That's cute. Like I said before, the playable heroes here are the DC Trinity. I think a lot of people are gonna find that disappointing. I did as well. I was hoping for the entire Justice League to be playable. I mean, the name is on the frickin' box. Also, like I've myself been doing in this video, the first game many will draw comparisons to is Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which gave you access to so many Marvel heroes. So naturally, it feels underwhelming to only have access to the 3 here. Especially in an isometric brawler where combat is very simple. So worrying about making 7 different characters feel distinct is not really an issue. Give me some slightly different attack animations and their special abilities. Combat mechanics stay fundamentally the same, and I don't imagine that would be a lot of work. Here I am, talking out of my ass again like I'm a game developer. But the rest of the Justice League is here as support characters at least. Cyborg, Green Lantern, Aquaman, and The Flash will swoop in to lend a hand, and will be readily available once their cooldown is up. So the most efficient way to fight enemies is to look out for those weaknesses. But I love that just throwing everything all at once is also a totally viable way of playing too. Throw a projectile, activate your special attack, call in Aquaman to come in with a big wave. Just complete madness condensed into one screen. The characters practically scream at you when their special attacks are ready, so it's more incentive to just keep the chaos going. The town of Happy Harbor is open to you to explore from the get-go. It's not as vast as something like Gotham Knights or Marvel's Spider-Man, it's more of a hub world. But there are plenty of loot chests and comic books to collect that you can use to purchase alternate costumes. You can also find optional dungeons that have a recommended minimum level to meet before diving in. Each hero has their own traversal ability you can use to get around town. Batman launches himself into the air with the grapnel gun, then glides around. Wonder Woman uses her lasso to swing, and easily being the best one is Superman's ability to fly. You can also just straight up steal people's cars and get around that way if you're feeling frisky. As we've well established by now, this is a game aimed at younger audiences, but don't sleep on it. That being said, the story here is not exactly an enthralling tale that'll get its hooks into you. It's a Saturday morning cartoon. I was surprised when I found out that this game isn't based on an already existing cartoon, with its particular take on these characters, art style, and really well fully animated 2D cutscenes. The premise is simple. Snapper Carr is elected mayor of Happy Harbor, and during his ceremony, Mr. Mixie Spitalik crashes the party, declares himself as mayor, and unleashes Starro the Conqueror to the masses. As you'd expect, a bunch of Starro clones attach themselves to the citizens of Happy Harbor, as well as members of the Justice League. Now it's up to the remaining Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman to appease to Mixie's ridiculous demands and save the day. We have an all-star cast here of Nathan Drake as Superman, Master of Rex Kwon Do as Batman, and Vanessa Marshall as Wonder Woman. I don't have a funny reference for that voice actor. Oh, she was Dr. Strangelove in Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. I like that game. Dr. Strangelove as Wonder Woman. I found the interpretations of these characters to be really charming, and they actually made me laugh out loud a couple times. Nolan North is always a tough one for me to see as someone other than Nathan Drake, which is crazy given the guy's extensive voice acting career. Not to mention that he has already voiced Superman, but I did really like his take on Superman here. He plays him as a himbo who's aloof and just kind of trying to find the fun in everything. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be happy to see Diedrich Bader back as Batman, after voicing him in the hit series Batman the Brave and the Bold. He plays an exaggerated version of Batman here, being overly grumpy and enclosed. Although Batman being overly grumpy and enclosed isn't an exaggeration, it's kind of accurate. I guess it's the way it's delivered. Wonder Woman is kind of the straight person that's constantly keeping the team in check. Except for that one time she was totally simping over Poison Ivy. She wasn't being a straight person there.
Ivy releases a chemical scent that makes her irresistible to anyone who hasn't been trained to counter its effects.
Yeah, she does.
The team here has great chemistry. Very silly, very funny, very cute. What surprised me the most about this game is, despite it looking like it's aimed at more casual audiences of the DC universe, there are some deep-cut villains and references here. You got Blue Snowman, there's references to the Checkmate organization, matches Malone as an unlockable costume for Batman. You can also do what was one of my favorite things to do in Marvel Ultimate Alliance. And that's just have conversations with your fellow superheroes. Once you've rescued them from Starro's control, you can find members of the Justice League back at HQ, as well as supporting characters like Alfred and Lois Lane. You can ask them questions about their past, their powers, their relationships to other characters. Doing this gives me such cozy vibes. I would 100% play a comic book game that's just this. I can imagine a longtime fan of DC playing this game along with their kid and getting a kick out of these obscure references. Now, what depresses me about what I just said is that there's no co-op for the main story. What the hell? Look at this game. Look at this game. This is prime co-op material. Now, to be fair, there is a separate co-op mode called Instant Action, but there's no objective in it. You just kinda free roam and mindlessly beat up bad guys with no real goal. I would much rather play the story from beginning to end with a buddy. This really confused me. I guess the developers wanted to design the game around the idea of constantly switching between the three heroes, depending on the enemy weaknesses at hand. Justice League Cosmic Chaos is a very simple game that doesn't overstay its welcome. It took me around 8 to 10 hours to finish, I beat it over the weekend, and I enjoyed my time with it. It's a mindless beat 'em up that gave me those dopamine hits whenever I was able to level up, upgrade my abilities, and see how much more damage my abilities would do. Despite its childish approach, there's a lot to enjoy here for DC fans. Bizarro was a highlight for me. I can tell the writers had a good time writing the dialogue between him and the Justice League with his whole opposite mentality. I'm willing to bet that had we gotten the same exact game in terms of gameplay mechanics, but the whole kid-oriented story, tone, and art style was replaced with something more mature, this game would have more traction and it would have been praised as, oh, this game reminds me of OG Marvel Ultimate Alliance. If you don't want to play this game because it's aimed at children, that's totally fair. But I just think it's cool that this game proves that kid games don't have to suck. And I mean games that are specifically aimed at children. You can say that Fortnite and Minecraft are, kid games, but those games have a larger demographic in mind. I'm talking about your Nickelodeon games, your Spider-Man Friend or Foe. Spider-Man Friend or Foe sucks. Justice League Cosmic Chaos doesn't. Anyway, that's my review. Take it away, Skeets.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more adventures.